the best thriller audiobooks. Hi guys, my name is Sharon and today we're talking thriller audiobooks. I consider myself quite the audiobook connoisseur. I have consumed like over 100 audiobooks. It might even be nearing 200 at this point. And I am in the camp of, I think listening to audiobooks counts as reading. I know there's always a really big discussion about this online and particularly on Book Talk. I'm visually impaired, so it's just so much easier for me to listen to an audiobook. And my one good eye, good being quite a stretch, really struggles to focus on reading words these days. So that's why I mainly listen to audiobooks now. Also, I love how it's May and I'm still wearing like 2 jumpers. I am so cold. I'm going to split this video up into different sections. Timestamps and all the books will be mentioned down below in the description. These books in my list today aren't necessarily my favourite thrillers of all time, but some just make for a really good listening experience. So first section is podcast audiobooks, thrillers with a podcast element. I like a good thriller revolving around a podcast, and I know a lot of people do as well. Some of these books I will just rapid fire because some are already really popular and they probably come up in every other person's best audiobooks list, such as None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell and Listen for the Lie by Aimee Tintera. I don't think I need to go in detail about those books because if you like thriller audiobooks, chances are you've probably already listened to them. There's also The Night Swim by Megan Goldin. I don't hear people talk about this one quite as much, but it does have over 100,000 ratings on Goodreads, so it is pretty popular. In this one, you're following a true crime podcaster and she's covering the story of an essay trial in a coastal town where an Olympic hopeful swimmer has been accused of essaying a girl in town. And at the same time, this podcaster is being stalked by someone else who wants her to investigate and look into a case about a missing girl. This Story Might Save Your Life by Tiffany Crum. This is a new release of this year and it's a genre blend between a thriller and a romance. I've seen so many people say that this is the best audiobook they've ever listened to. This story centers around 2 hosts of a comedy survival podcast, Benny and Joy, and then one day Joy and her husband go missing and Benny becomes the prime suspect. So Benny sets out to find her and clear his own name. I actually felt quite neutral about this storyline. I wasn't really sold on the romance, but I think I'm in the minority because so many people loved this. And I will say the audiobook production was really good. You have different narrators and also people calling into the podcast as well. And you also have Julia Whelan as one of the main narrators. Julia Whelan is definitely one of my favourite narrators of all time. Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson. You also have a true crime podcaster here who lets people go onto her show to anonymously reveal confessions. This podcaster has some dark secrets of her own, and then one day she gets a guest who comes on and he tells her that he unalived her mother. But our podcaster knows this isn't true because she actually unalived her mother's unaliver years ago. Hopefully that made sense. I wasn't blown away by the plot twist and I wasn't really a fan of the main character's dialogue, but I did think the premise of this was really interesting. And again, I might be in the minority because I saw so many people give this one 5 stars. The next section I'm going to call Immersive Experience, and I have 2 audiobooks for this. They are both Alice Feeney books. And again, super popular thrillers. My Husband's Wife, which came out earlier this year, one of the biggest and most talked about thrillers of this year, I think. You have a wife who goes for a run in the morning and you can hear her running, you can hear the birds chirping, but when she gets home, her keys don't fit in the lock and her husband claims he doesn't know who she is. But there's so much more to this story. You get all the sound effects and a full cast narration. This was a really twisty one and also quite unhinged as well. Then there's Beautiful Ugly, another unhinged one. You're following a once successful author who is mourning the loss of his wife after she disappears. In his grief, he decides to move to a remote, secluded Scottish island and he thinks he keeps seeing his wife everywhere on the island. Again, there are sound effects in here, like the car engine running, and it feels very atmospheric. This isn't my favourite Alice Feeney, but the plot twist did blow my mind. And the next section, audiobooks with a full cast narration. I love an audiobook with multiple narrators, especially if the book has multiple POVs. I'm going to rapid fire some of the first few because they are really popular. They all have over 100k ratings on Goodreads, so you've probably heard of them before. Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica is one of my favourite missing persons thrillers. Different girls go missing in this one and it had me on the edge of my seat. When She Returned by Lucinda Berry, you have a woman who disappears after being indoctrinated into a cult, and then 10 years later she returns. You're following this woman, the teenage daughter she left behind, and her husband's new wife. Each narrator's voice suited their character so well. The next, Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. This is the sequel to The Last Mrs. Parrish, which is one of my favourite thrillers of all time. If you haven't read it, you should. I actually don't know how to describe The Next Mrs. Parrish without giving spoilers away for the first book, so I would definitely recommend reading the first book first. The Last Mrs. Parrish was more of a slow burn, whereas this sequel is a lot more fast paced. It was really bingeable. This one was really fun, and there are some characters you just love to hate. Look Closer by David Ellis is a twisty psychological thriller that's actually really fitting for Halloween. I think it takes place on Halloween. You have a seemingly perfect married couple, a trust fund, an unaliving, revenge and secrets. Gone Before Goodbye by Harlan Coben and Reese Witherspoon. I've only actually recently started this, so I'm only partway through, haven't finished yet. This one has so many narrators, including Reese Witherspoon as one of them. Here you have a disgraced combat surgeon who takes on a secretive, high-paying job for this mysterious, wealthy client. I have no idea where this is going and what's going to happen, but so far I'm enjoying it. It feels quite different to the other thrillers I tend to read. Goodnight Beautiful by Aimee Molloy. This one is about a newlywed couple who move to the husband's sleepy hometown. The husband is a therapist and he works really long hours and has mostly female clients. So the wife is spending so much time alone whilst her husband is working in the downstairs office. Little does he know that there's a vent in his ceiling, which means all his conversations can be heard outside of the room and his sessions aren't as private as he thinks they are. The plot twist will blow your mind, and it will mess with your mind as well, specifically because of one narrator's voice. But I can't even say why because it will spoil it otherwise. You just have to trust me and listen to it. What Happened to Nina by Dervla McTiernan. This one is a slow suspense that feels like you're listening to a true crime documentary. It's about a teenage couple called Nina and Simon, and they go away for the weekend to Simon's family's cabin in Vermont, which is basically in the middle of nowhere. After this weekend is over though, only Simon returns and he claims he doesn't know what happened to Nina. Nina's parents then launch a media campaign to find her, and of course Simon becomes the prime suspect. But Simon's parents are really rich and they're going to do anything they can to protect their son. You basically follow everyone's POV in this besides Nina's. This is less of a twisty thriller and definitely more of a slow-paced one with commentary on how far parents will go to protect their children. This was a 5-star read for me and the ending was so satisfying. The Family Experiment by John Marrs. I actually think a lot of John Marrs books has full cast or dual narration, including the one which is one of his most popular thriller books. John Marrs does a lot of dystopian speculative thrillers and this is one of them. It's set in a future where the cost of having a child is just way too high. There is a reality TV show where contestants can join and they have to basically look after and raise a virtual AI child, and the winner gets a massive cash prize that allows them to start a real family of their own after. Really interesting premise, and I'm still making my way through John Marrs' backlist. The Trap by Catherine Ryan Howard. This is based on a real unsolved case in Ireland during the 1990s called The Vanishing Triangle, where a serial kidnapper / unaliver was preying on young women. You have a girl whose sister disappeared around a year ago, and she's really frustrated with the police's efforts in finding her, and she starts going out late at night, putting herself in harm's way, basically to bait the kidnapper to come find her, hoping this will lead her to her sister. There are a lot of different POVs in this one. In fact, I think there were a bit too many for me. Even though you have a full cast narration, I actually couldn't keep up with everyone and I kept on forgetting who everyone was. So if you're good with many different POVs, then yes, I recommend this one. Then I have a couple of books with dual narration that I really liked. They Never Learn by Layne Fargo. You're following a professor at a uni and she's a serial unaliver. She picks the worst men on campus to unalive. And then you're also following a freshman student who's plotting some revenge of her own and also planning on an unaliving. One of my favourite thrillers of all time, and I thought the two narrators were perfect for their characters. The Wife Stalker by Liv Constantine. This is a domestic thriller following a really devoted wife whose husband ends up leaving her for another woman in town. You're following the perspectives of both these women. This one was fun, really bingeable, a bit unhinged, and again you have Julia Whelan as one of the narrators. And for this final section, these are narrators that I like and just audiobooks that I liked in general because of the narrator. I actually personally don't care for an immersive experience with sound effects and stuff. I get sensory overload quite easily, and sometimes I just want an audiobook where I just like the narrator's voice. The Eddie Flynn series by Steve Kavanagh. This is a legal thriller series and there are quite a lot of books in this series now. I haven't read them all. They can be read as standalones. Eddie Flynn is a conman turned defense lawyer. In each book you're following a different case where he's part of the trial. But if you do read this in order or want to read the whole series, you do get to see the progression of Eddie Flynn's personal life as well, and I do enjoy that aspect. All the books are narrated by Adam Sims and I really like his narration. Eddie Flynn is the protagonist in all the books. Naturally you just root for him, but I think Adam Sims does a really good job of making Eddie Flynn a really likeable character as well. So far my favourite book out of the series has been 50/50, which is about a pair of identical twins and they both call into 911 to report the unaliving of their father, but each twin is accusing the other of the unaliving. Good Intentions by Marisa Walsh. I feel like I've mentioned this book a lot of times on my channel now. It's a new release for this year. This is a psychological thriller about obsession. You're following a woman named Katie and her identical twin sister has just passed away in a car accident. And when she's in hospital, she has an encounter with a woman who's also lost her son on the very same day. And then Katie starts stalking this woman. She becomes obsessed with her. And Katie thinks that her and this woman are basically going through the same thing. They lost a person at the same time. This is narrated by Brittany Presley, and they're also one of the narrators in Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. Obviously what Katie thinks she's doing is completely rational and she justifies all her actions. I thought the narrator did a really good job of bringing that through. One of my favourite thrillers of this year so far, Pinky Swear by Danielle Girard, another thriller that I can't stop harping on about. You're following a young woman in her 20s whose surrogate goes missing just a few days before she's due to give birth. Naturally this sends her on a wild goose chase trying to find her surrogate, and she uncovers a lot of dark secrets and she realises she doesn't know her surrogate as well as she thought she did. This is narrated by Alexandra Bolton and they have such a calming voice. I'd say this is a quite fast-paced thriller, and normally I don't feel too invested in popcorn thrillers. I much prefer a slower paced suspenseful thriller. But I thought the narrator did a really good job of bringing out all the characters' emotions, and I was just really emotionally invested in the storyline, and I really wanted this character to find her surrogate. Don't Tell by Mary Stone and Matt Giegerick. This is a psychological thriller following a counsellor named Lizette who works at a camp for troubled teens. Then one day there's a new teenage girl who joins the camp and she's pregnant, and Lizette suspects the father is a much older man. This then reopens old wounds for Lizette. This is narrated by Emily Norman, and again a really calming, soothing voice. and I think this made me like the book even more. I wonder if any of these narrators do ASMR. They have really ASMR voices. Then last on this list, A Good Mother by Michelle Dunn. One of my favourite underrated thrillers. You're following a grieving mother who is devastated after her teenage daughter is found unalived face down in a river, and the police suspect it's self-unaliving. The mother, however, knows in her gut that this can't be true and that someone else must have done the unaliving because her daughter has always been deeply afraid of water after drowning when she was a really young child. But no one will believe her, not even her own husband, so she takes it into her own hands to do some digging and investigating. This is narrated by Jacqueline Milne, and the story is set in Ireland. I do love an Irish accent, and funnily enough, I like my audiobooks to have any other accent besides British accents. I mean, I still listen to British books with British accents, but I prefer my books set outside of England because, I don't know, there's more of a level of escapism. I do feel like Jacqueline Milne portrayed a grieving mother really well. Everyone should read this thriller, it needs so much more love. Those were all my best audiobook recommendations. Hopefully there were some new thriller books that you haven't heard of before. I'll probably be doing a video in the future of audiobooks in other genres. If you liked this video, please like or subscribe, it would really help the channel out, and please let me know your favourite thriller audiobooks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.